Hey there, CPO here, and in my last video, I showed you the installation of the Metalcloak exo corners with the integrated LED taillights. In that video, I mentioned the Hyperflash problem, and that is a common problem with a lot of late model vehicles, but particularly these JKs, when you exchange the factory halogen bulb setups for an LED setup, because LEDs draw a lot less power and they put a lot less load on the system. So to the Jeep, which is monitoring that resistance, it looks like you have a bulb out, but you don't. So the result of that is the Hyperflash. Let me catch you back up to the end of that video, and then I will show you how to install a load resistor, and in a creative way, I think, that I came up with to achieve getting it mounted. So anyway, let's get caught up. All right, so one thing I need to talk about, and that is the Hyperflash. Let me go turn on a blinker. All right, so as you can see, I'm getting the rapid flash of my blinker. That's commonly known as a Hyperflash. The reason it does that is the JK doesn't have an old school sort of blinker relay module like you may be familiar with on older Jeeps. It's all handled by the computer. And so what happens is it senses the resistance in that circuit, and if it identifies that there is less resistance than it thinks it should have, it assumes that your light bulb is out. So that's a rapid flash, and then also an indicator on the, actually, let me show you this. You'll likely get an indicator that looks like this that says left turn signal out, and if I switch to the right, it won't take long before it thinks it's bad. There you go, right. So the reason it does that, like I said, is because your computer thinks you have a light bulb out, because the LEDs draw a lot less power, and thus the computer sees it as less resistant. So there is a fix to that. Unfortunately, it's something you're gonna have to do. Now, some people choose to put up with the Hyperflash and the warning. Every time you turn on the vehicle, you're gonna get a ding, and then that warning's gonna come up. It's up to you whether or not that bothers you or not. For those of you that want to make it back to normal, here's what you need. You need a resistor like this. It doesn't have to be this exact one. I'll put a link down in the description. So you're gonna wire this in parallel, not in series. And what that means is you're just gonna tap into it, and I'll show you that here. But you'll need a resistor to get it to behave normally. 5.6 ohms to 6 ohms is probably where you wanna be. A lot of people use 6. A lot of people use 5.6, all seem to have consistently similar results. All right, so I got my tail lights out and on the table. You can see I did a really great job of bundling those wires. Problem is now I gotta undo some of that so I can add these load resistors. So again, this is the load resistor that I'm using, a 50 watt, 6 ohm. I got them in a pack of 4, so it wasn't much more expensive to get a 4-pack over a 2-pack, and it guarantees I have a spare on hand in case there's a failure of some sort. So anyway, that's those. The package does come with a bunch of these quick splices, which I do not use these, so I'm not going to use them in this. Now, this load resistor is going to heat up a lot. They do generate heat. Basically, that's what resistance does, is it converts the electrical energy into heat. So this thing is going to get really hot. So you want to mount it securely inside the lighting compartment area, and you can use self-drilling screws and tap that into the side of the sheet metal on the tub. On the passenger side, as you can see, it's pretty easy to get to. On the driver's side, not so much. So a little bit more challenging to do there. So what I chose to do is, thankfully somebody posted a little tip for me about using magnets for mounting those. So I took that and ran with it. I'm going to use this setup, which is basically 2 magnets that will stick to the tub, and 2 of them makes it extra super duper secure, and but also removable. So if I have a failure, or for whatever reason need to change things up, I could just remove it and then replace it. So what you'll see here is a threaded post. So let me show you this first, and then we'll get to the wiring. So I just got a pack of these magnets with 4mm posts. And what I found is on these guys, it doesn't quite fit through, but it is just close enough where actually we can use it to tap the threads. Now, normally I would use a thread tap, a proper tap to do this, but because this is a steel post and this is an aluminum body, it actually is good enough to tap itself. So I'm just going to start this slowly, and then what I find is eventually it's just going to thread itself through. And then in that case, I don't need to use a nut or anything. And basically what I'm doing now, it's threaded through. I'm just going to run it through about halfway. Gives it a little bit of offset from the magnet, but you know, secures it in place. If you wanted to put a nut on to cap it off, that's fine, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I just do the same thing to the other side. I've never seen anybody do it like this, so that could be because I'm an idiot and this is a dumb idea, or it could be I'm a genius and I'm the first to come up with something really cool, or I just haven't found where somebody else has done this. But anyway, that's that. So that's now how I have magnet mounted load resistors. Yeah? All right, so let's talk about the wires. So these wires are basically going to run in parallel to those wires, and we're just going to basically tap into the existing wire harness for the ground and the blinker brake circuit. I'm going to do that on the wires that come out of the light. It's a better wire, it's a thicker wire, it's a more pliable wire. The wires on these plugs from the factory are super thin and in almost more brittle wire type. So I guess now I get to undo some of my fancy wire loom work. All right, so for the wires we're going to tap into on the actual brake light assembly from Metalcloak, we're going to use the white and the red. I know that seems odd because we need a ground and the turn signal / brake light. So that's the red one. The turn signal brake is red. The white is actually the ground on this system, not the black. So make sure you understand that. Now, if you're connecting to the actual factory harness and those wiring colors, black is ground and it's the white and yellow wire that is the turn signal / brake circuits. So make sure you know which wires do what. So again, it's going to be the white and red we're going to tap into on this particular setup. So, and then we're just literally going to T-tap or T-splice into those. You can use the taps that came with the resistors, but I'm going to do a different type. I call it a military tap or a T-tap, but basically I'm going to remove a little bit of the sheathing here, open up the wire, stab the end through, wrap it up, and yeah, that's how I do things. So you can solder it if you want, you can use butt connectors, cut and whatever. This is how I do these. All right, so there we go. That's the new harness with the addition of the load resistor and the magnetic mount for it. So let's go stick it in and see how it works. All right, plug in my harness. And then this is just gonna go right there. Clips in there nicely. Should be nice and secure. Stays out of the way of everything. Move it up out of the way. I'm gonna put the reverse lights up this time. And of course, the other really nice thing about using the magnet mount and having it attached to the light itself is I can unplug it from the Jeep and then pull out the entire assembly. And so, yeah, it's not like I have to unscrew anything on the inside in order to do any work on this. I do like how these lights are reversible up and down, so you can change it up. You want it to look more like a TJ with the reverse lights on top? Go for it, it's just that easy. All right, let's go turn on that blinker. Boom, Hyperflash resolved. No more warning signal on the Jeep. And as far as it knows, that's the factory light. Sweet. And now I'll knock out this driver's side one in exactly the same way. All I'm doing is giving myself just enough room to get a couple wraps in there. So compressing that sheath, using a little pick tool to just make a hole right in the middle, like threading a needle. If you want to see more detail about how I'm using this particular splice method, you can go look at my wiring of the switchbacks on my front LED halos for my HID projector lights. I go through that in pretty good detail. So then the zip tie is a strain relief. So it keeps any tugs on the wire from pulling against the joint and rather just locks that in place. In this case, I'm doing sort of a triple strain relief because then I'm relieving the entire bundle here. These little zip tie heads add a little more bulk, but in the end, it doesn't really matter. This is wire loom tape. It's actually designed for vehicle wiring, so it's heat, abrasion, chemical, water resistant. One more strain relief for the bundle. Boom, ready to go.